I'm just going to say, Jon Draper, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming back. It's Jamie and Rivers. Let's keep on talking.
All right. Well, I'm happy. I'm very happy to be here with you guys today. What do we have? A 6-hour time difference?
5.
I think so.
5. Okay, so it's nighttime for you. So enjoy it.
Yeah, it's just gone just after 8 p.m. here.
It's Guinness time. So
that's a nice looking pour you got there. That looks fancy.
Yeah, it's I stole this glass from a pub, so I got like a
nice.
proper official gift glass.
I like it.
So, yeah,
they don't miss it.
John.
I'm sure they don't miss it. I'm sure they have plenty.
I follow my own rules. I don't care about the system, man. This is me sticking it to the man.
There we go. So. Well, Jamie, last time I was on, you weren't here.
Yes, I know. And I apologise for that. And now Callum's not here.
I know.
So.
We apologise for that. We will eventually get all of us together,
Yes.
And what else I'd like to do as well is I'd like to get Brian on the show at some point as well.
So he would love that. Absolutely.
He can jump in,
Yeah, he would.
Me and him we can just chinwag about horror all night, That'd be great.
Oh, he's well. Also, Shaheen from the show is big horror person. I know. I think Rivers knows, but Jamie, my brother Michael. I have a lot of brothers, and my brother Michael, he has a horror podcast called Necromaniacs. With a guy from a band called Tombs, which is a pretty big metal band here that tours all over the world, and they cover horror movies, like mostly underground type horror movies.
Yeah, awesome. I'll check them out. I do like horror. I'm not a big horror buff like you guys, but I do like horror. I'm a Halloween guy.
Okay.
I do love me some Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys like horror, you should just come to the States now, and that's all we have here is just horror. Right now, so.
And that's a nice little segue into what the hell happened, man, in the first week. Everyone's waiting for 2020 to be over, and we're finally out of it. We're like, oh, things have got to get better, right? And within a week, we have a Viking raiding.
Yeah. We called it the Stupid Revolution. It was basically the lowest forms of our society decided to disrupt our democracy in a very, very ridiculous fashion, and we're still dealing with it about eight or 9 days later, and it's just so shameful. I feel I'm embarrassed as a citizen, but I'm also sad. I make jokes about it, obviously, because I'm on a comedy podcast, but. Yeah. It makes me very sad. My father was military. My grandfather was military. If they were alive, they would be disgraced. They would just feel so ashamed. It's not even a political thing. It's just a decent thing. It just seems very, very gross. It was great for discussion because I think it prompted a lot of people to talk about things they don't like to talk about. But I still, honestly, every time I see footage of it, I go do this every time. I just shake my head. What else can you do? It's brutal. And it's going to probably cause a lot of law changes in this country. I think they're going to do a lot of changes, make some very extreme laws. So we did a show last night. I'm a little concerned about that. I'm a little weary of the government. Yeah, I mean, what can you say? From your perspective, like, what was when you saw this in your country, what was your country's perception of this? Was it just like very disturbing?
Maybe not so disturbing, but it's just kind of crazy, and I don't fully understand. And I don't trust the media because on both sides they tend to just it's almost like they pick up two kittens by the scruff of the neck and they tap their heads together and start fighting each other. And then you just see it all exploding on Twitter. Nazis here, regressive leftists here, and it's just all kind of going nuts, It just kind of came across as really bonkers, really, because I can't imagine, apart from Guy Fawkes back in the day, somebody raiding Parliament and trying to turn it on its head. Again, comedy gold, because the guy was dressed like a wrestler. I thought that was kind of amusing.
Yeah,
but,
he
was. But I mean, I'm as a chap from the UK, I hear bits and pieces about QAnon, but I'm not really sure exactly what that is. I know it's a bunch of guys that are into conspiracy theories. That's about my level of understanding. And
when I tell you what it is, you're not going to believe me, but I will tell you what it actually it's, and this is actually what it is. So apparently, a bunch of very far right not extremist types, believed that there is an underground pedophile ring that is corrupted mostly by politicians and rich people who tend to be left-leaning, but not exclusively left-leaning, and that Donald Trump was put in power to expose this pedophile ring, and that a very high-ranking person in the government, an anonymous person that they call Q, is working with him to try to expose and save the children. That is literally what it's about.
Hang on a minute. Isn't Q James Bond's tech guy?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Q traditionally is the tech person in the James Bond movies, but
see, I've never seen James Bond, but to me, Q wasn't Q in Star Trek as well? Wasn't there a character called Q in Star Trek?
Q's everywhere, man.
There's also a great dinosaur movie called Q, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, Q
so yeah.
The
Winged Serpent. Yeah, it's a very cult movie. It's got a cult following. Yeah. It's shot in New York City.
Yeah.
So most people Q is like but it's just so crazy. Like, I don't understand how we got here. I really don't. I'm just, I'm going to be 50 years old. I'm 49, and I can't believe how the slide every time you think you hit like the bottom, there's so much more bottom to go. It's just very shocking to me. Like, it's shocking to me that my children think this is normal. Like, I have teenagers that think this is what life is supposed to be like. And I'm like, no. Like, we're not supposed to live like this. You know what I mean? We're supposed to have a very different life than what's been happening. So
I couldn't believe what I was watching. I mean, I got home from work and I put the news on because we get a daily coronavirus update from our government, and I turned the news on and it was like live from America, and I was like, what the hell's going on? And I try to avoid politics and all that kind of stuff. It just looked to me like a bunch of brain dead morons manipulated by a president who doesn't give a toss about them into doing that. And
sounds like you know what's going on. I mean, honestly, there's really no other way to describe it.
I think it's like a mixture of things. Like, obviously, like, we've got Trump, who doesn't really give a shit. He's about making people at the top the money, like most presidents, as far as I can. With my limited knowledge of politics, American politics, they all seem to kind of go for that. They all seem to bail out Wall Street and kind of fuck everybody else. But I think it's such a melting pot of things, like the climate of the year with the COVID virus. The Twitter war, the incessant Twitter wars, and the cancel culture, and the warring sides, and I don't know. Like I say, I feel like, I don't want to get into any conspiracy theories, but I do feel like there's just some kind of big fat suited cat at the top of all this, just laughing, making all the money while everybody else just attacks each other.
Well, that's that in the punk rock hardcore. I've been a part of the hardcore scene in New York for 33 years, and the punk rock person in me sees this and goes, they're trying to make this about something that it's not, so you don't pay attention to the top. We had the CARES Act that we passed here, and we gave, I think, $4 or $5 billion to corporations tax free, and we gave U.S. citizens $600. So I mean, what does that tell you? The corporations. So I think it's sadly, I think we've been distracted. And a lot of people don't like when I say this, but it's just how I feel. I think we've been distracted by things like race, and when in fact it's about class. And now you have, and that's just about to say, it's class warfare, and it makes me sad. A class system in the UK, and I pay attention to politics. The working class, the middle class, and the upper class. Well, the problem is the middle class here was getting too rich, and the middle class here was really climbing above the middle class. I'm from a lower middle class family because my family didn't own anything, and then I was fairly, middle class, if not upper middle class, for a while when I worked on Wall Street for many years. Now I'm a little bit more in the middle again. But I think it's very sexy to distract people by saying it's about race and it's about sexism and it's about the patriarchy, when in fact all these people don't realize is that they're fighting with each other, is that there is a very large segment of this country that has a lot of money, and you're not in that group, and they're making decisions, and they want you to fight with your neighbor. They want you to fight with your cousin about the president, because then you don't get distracted by paying attention to the fact that you don't have health care in this country. I think it's up to almost 24 million people from COVID have lost healthcare in this country. The middle class is getting wiped out completely because they can't afford to even be in the middle class. And they're getting distracted. They're getting inundated by corporate media saying, hey, the biggest problem in this country is sexism and racism. It's like, well, what about classism? And nobody, but it's just such an unpopular thing to say, because as soon as you say it's about sexism and racism, everybody gives you a like and everybody pats you on the back and tells you how great you are. But when you start saying it's about classism and saying the problem is there's rich oligarchs in this country that want middle class and poor people to kill one another. The fact that I live in a country without universal health care is disturbing to me. I mean, it's absolutely disturbing. I mean, it's 330 million people in this country. That's documented. There's no formal health care system. Most people in this country are getting comfortable being angry and not having money and not owning anything and having no health insurance. And I think if people had jobs and they had health insurance and there was what they call a UBI, which is, assistance from the government in the form of all these taxes that we pay, you could fix things like racism, sexism, and inequality. Because I'm not saying these things aren't existing. There are huge problems in this country, huge problems. Anti-Semitism, racism, sexism. But classism is a major problem. Everything starts there, because you have rich and poor, and the rich don't want anybody getting close to their environment, don't want to, that's the way it's always felt to me. The thing that I liked about punk rock, as a teenager in the 80s was it was very clear cut. It was like, you can't trust the government, you can't trust authority. There are rich people in this country, they never go to war, they never suffer, you suffer. And I was like, makes sense. Because I didn't come from a lot of money, and my family was relatively lower middle class, and, it made sense to me. And now I'm older and I see my children get swept up in everybody's a racist and everybody's a sexist. And I'm like, well, what about the rich? Like, what about the richest people in this country that don't pay their fair share of taxes, have not been impacted? We have new billionaires in America. We've created more billionaires since COVID started. We have new billionaires. We have probably more billionaires, I think, than any country. I don't know.
Who's the chap that owns Amazon? Is it Bezos?
Bezos made, since COVID started, he's made more billion.
$13 billion in the first 2 months of COVID, the first lockdown. He made $13 billion.
Right. I wonder if all these people throwing bricks through Starbucks and fighting about, know that. I wonder if that, and meanwhile, Amazon was put in this dubious position to be the only outlet for shopping, for groceries, for Christmas presents, holiday presents.
I ordered things from Amazon in the lockdown, so I'm guilty of
because you probably didn't have much of a choice.
Well,
so
no.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. So it's like, to me, it's like I just wish that a lot of these people, whether it's the people in the streets, throwing bricks through Starbucks, in Antifa, or whether it's these morons at Capitol Hill embarrassing themselves, none of these people are rich. None of these people own anything. None of them have any help from the government. Like, you have to, a better use of time would be for those people and the far left and Black Lives Matter and these pro-feminist groups to sit down and go, well, there's one thing that we all have in common here, is that we're all being pushed down upon by a higher class of people.
Yeah.
And no one ever says this. It's like celebrities in this country are so quick to, try to align themselves with mostly, left-leaning politics. But in reality, it's like, I don't think Ellen DeGeneres knows what it's like to not have health insurance. I really don't. I don't, like maybe you should shut up if you're living in a $30 million house. What I mean? Like, yeah. That's my take on it. I think we're being conned. I think they want Antifa and the Trump people, the MAGA hat people, and Black Lives Matter. They want them to kill each other. They want us to kill each other. Because then we don't pay attention to what's really going on.
I was reading the news today, and obviously it's the inauguration, isn't it, next week? And I was reading the FBI have already penciled in 200 potential people that are going to cause trouble at the inauguration. So
yeah, it's like a football match, right?
It is,
It's like a footy match, exactly.
Yeah, it's like a footy match. I mean, it's like, it really is. It's like, isn't that what you guys started doing like 20 years ago in the UK with CCTV and literally banning people for life from football stadiums, right?
Yeah. It was a huge problem here in the 70s and 80s.
Oh my God.
Hooliganism was a huge problem. Like, I mean, it was very organized as well. That's the scary thing. It was organized, you know. They would rival sides would organize to meet at a train station or wherever and beat the fuck out of each other for
right
because they support the Reds and they support the Blues. I'm not really a football guy.
No, I know. But I'm saying, does that sound, when you say that to me, that literally sounds like what happened all summer in my country. I mean, you had pro-Trump people showing up to fight with Black Lives Matter people, which makes no sense. I mean, it's ridiculous that anybody would fight over these things. It's just, instead of just recognizing that we have people in this country that are being treated very crappy and not happy and are in bad shape. And most of it is class. It has nothing to do with the fact that, you know, but the media is not going to tell you that because they're owned by billion-dollar companies. You know, no one is going to get on, you know, CNN or NBC here or whatever and say, you know, it's really just class warfare, because they don't want it to be class warfare. Because if it was really class warfare, we would win. We would win. We would win big time.
The rich would be eaten alive if regular people really truly found out how much money that they're sat on. They would be. And
I just wish that younger people, like, you know, college age people, or like my teenagers, like, I just wish they would understand that they're being used the same way that, you know, they're being used. We're all being used, you know. And it makes me sad.
You know, you have a big punk background, and I was big time into punk in the 90s when I was in my teen years. And again, like you were saying, it was all about fighting the system and fighting the man and the government and authority. And nobody really seems to be fighting against that anymore.
They're fighting each other.
Fighting each other. And it doesn't make any sense to me, because I'm like, look, I mean, whatever you think of me, white privilege, cisgendered, male, whatever the hell I am, you know, I don't care. I'm on your team, you know, like I've got no money, you've got no money.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Let's go get the fucking money, you know. So
yeah. I mean, I feel like everybody's lives would benefit. Like I say this on a podcast, and I don't know a lot of people who are really right. I just don't. I know mostly liberal, left-leaning people because I'm because of punk rock and music. You know, my wife is Jewish. We're not conservative people. We're just not, you know. That being said, I don't live in a world. The problem is there's 75 million people that voted for Donald Trump this time around. 75 million. That's a lot of people. Where there are people in this country on the left that think that all these people just need to disappear and go away. And I'm like, well, that seems a little unrealistic. Like, why don't you try to find a way? We have to find a way to incorporate those 75 million people. Find out why they felt that way, because I don't think every single one of them is a racist, a sexist person. I definitely think that racist people like Donald Trump. That's 100%. That's a fact. But I can't sit here and say there are people on the left in politics that will say, that's 75. That's because half the country is racist and sexist. And I'm like, that seems a little dangerous. I don't know that that's necessally true. I think there's a lot of stupid.
It's a very dangerous thing to put out there.
That's a dangerous thing, but that's what the media puts out here. Is that if you're
but the trouble is, it would be too much hard work maybe to actually research why Donald Trump got into power in the first place. What happened between Obama and him? Like, what was the quagmire there that kind of stirred these people up to vote for Donald Trump, you know?
Yeah, well, and it really goes back to the recession here, you know.
I know there was a lot of working class people voting for him because he was promising to bring back jobs and bring back car manufacturing.
And he was a TV star, and he was on a TV show, and he's a TV star, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I watched an interesting movie about the Brexit. Benedict Cumberbatch was in it, and I obviously don't live in the UK. But, you know, I worked for Barclays Bank. I worked for Lehman Brothers. I worked for a UK bank, you know, in the States. So I have a little understanding of it. But I like, it's funny when I see who the prime minister, who's Boris
Johnson.
Yeah, Boris Johnson. Like I saw him portrayed in that TV movie that came out a couple years ago, and I couldn't believe it. And I was just like, wow, like there's a lot of parallels here. Because Boris Johnson is portrayed in this country as stupid, as ultra conservative, uncaring. I know Nigel Farage's name comes up like that in this country. So it's just you know, it's so funny how our countries are so intertwined forever. Like, it's just, we're always going to be intertwined. Like, it's never like, this goes back forever. And I'll never forget this for as long as I live. This is a true story. The day after 9/11. I guess they played our national anthem in front of the palace, and there was so many people in the streets in the UK crying for America, and I was just like, and it's just like, yeah, like you just forget, like we're related, like we're together, like you know what I mean, like we're the strongest allies ever. I mean, we've been allies since we killed each other 400 years ago. But it's just like, yeah, you know, but I watched that not that long ago, and it's just so sad to see like how like this got conflated with nationalism for people, and it's just like, you know, I see what goes on in the UK and London and slashings, and I'm just like, I scratch my head. I'm like, I don't know, man. It's just, you know, you guys had some crazy right-wing people, you know, trying to push back on Muslim people, but they were actually kind of racist. These right-wing people, they were. I mean, they just were. Just like a lot of these Trump people are racist. You have people wearing white power shirts at the goddamn cap. People wearing Nazi T-shirts in the Capitol, man. Really?
It's
like
unbelievable.
Could you even imagine that, like in Parliament, like people just openly wearing white power, like what if like a bunch of like people took over like Parliament and were wearing Nazi, like you'd be like throw up in your mouth. You'd be like, this is like fake, right? This can't be real, you know? So that's, you know, it's sad. It's just a sad state, you know. It's just, I don't know how it's going to get better. I think people need to kind of chill out and start working together, but I don't think we're anywhere close to that. Because the left is pretty pissed too. They're pissed because they were like, we told you this was going to happen. We told you this was going to happen. Now it happens. And it's kind of hard to kind of shake it off. I mean, we're so divided. It's sad. It's sad for me to see as I get older, man, because my life was not like this. It was pretty good. Everything wasn't great, but it was like we were living together. We were working together. Now I just feel like everybody's so separate, and then, you know, I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, and this is what they think their future is going to be like. Yeah. Scared.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. Like, well, how do your teenagers, how do they navigate themselves through a world? I presume they're on Twitter and all that kind of stuff, right? Social media and everything else. So how do they do they talk to you about, like, you know, the I don't know, the politics and the left and the right and the
well, they're very you know, they're very whatever is popular. So right. Like you know, if hating the police is popular, they hate the police. If loving the police is popular, they love the police. If hating white men over 35 is popular, they hate white men over 35. If you know, if the Pope says something really nice, oh, we love the Pope even though they're Jewish. You know what I mean? It's whatever's in front of them that is being fed to them that's important. Like I don't know a lot about Kanye West. I just don't. But like my daughter, my younger daughter is into the Kardashians. Like she likes them. So my wife was like, "Oh, Kim and Kanye are breaking up." And I go, "Yeah, she's probably going to get a lot of money." And my daughter, without skipping a beat, was like, "She has her own money." Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, she was like insulted.
She does have a lot of money. But
yeah, but Kanye is on
Kanye's money as well.
Yeah, but Kanye is worth like hundreds of billions of dollars too, you know? Yeah. So it's like when I hear that, I go, "Oh, she's going to get half his money." And my daughter was like, "Oh," she was like insulted. And I'm like, well, she is. She's going to get half his money.
That's true. That's the legal system in America, you know.
Yeah, so, and in California, it's that way. So it's just like, you know, they go whatever is popular or trendy. You know, if it's trendy to you know, to club seals and then eat them, they'll probably beat a bunch of seals in the backyard. But they're teenagers, so it's like they don't really investigate anything. You know, they say they put a lot of dumb shit on the internet, but that's, you know, I would have probably done the same thing when I was their age.
It's really fascinating because, yeah, like you say, it's really fascinating for me because, like, obviously when I was a teenager, there was no such thing. Well, I mean, it existed, the internet, but like it was barely nothing. You know? I kind of thank God that it wasn't such.
Yeah, I would have been putting like Iron Maiden is the greatest band in the world.
Yeah,
you know, Twisted Sister is awesome.
Yeah. On one hand, I'd have been like, yeah, Metallica. And then on the other hand, from my softer side, I'd be like, the Lemonheads. You know? Like,
I would have been like Slayer. And then like a year later, I'd been like, the Smiths make me cry.
Yeah, the Smiths. I love the Smiths. So yeah, that would have been it. Like, yeah,
I got a Marcy shirt on right now.
Right on. Cool.
So my kids, like, you know, but I worry about them because like, I feel like they're not getting full stories. They're just getting the sensationalism of things.
That's the trouble, I think, with the danger about Twitter and stuff. And
it's scary.
You get a sexy headline, a distracting headline, like for instance the Elliot Page thing about a month back, when Elliot was Elliot and, you know, and not Ellen. Sorry to dead name, but but I saw all these opinions and articles, and it's firing back and forth on Twitter, and I'm like, is this the most interesting thing that we can be talking about?
Yeah,
right now? Like,
in the middle of a pandemic, we got unemployment, rampant unemployment, election year.
Your wife's on the front line working with COVID patients.
Right now, literally, yeah.
Right now. And
right
people are dying, people are broke. It seems like a really dark time, and when we're talking about some woman that became a
transition.
guy.
Yeah, transition. She's transition.
Who cares?
Well, because but here's the thing: instead of focusing on why don't I have health care, why don't I have a job, why can't I afford to leave my parents' house, why don't I own any property, why don't I have this, why don't my local politicians pass anything to help us? I'm gonna fight with the guy in Oklahoma about calling Ellen Elliott for the day.
Yeah.
I mean, like, honestly, it just doesn't seem like a very good, but that's what this has always been about. Yeah. It's been, the 80s, we tried to warn the people, when I first heard punk rock, it was the Dead Kennedys, Suicidal Tendencies, Black Flag. All of them said the same God circle jerks. They all said the same thing. Fuck authority. Don't trust authority. The government is not your friend. Don't trust big business. Fuck don't what's the word I'm looking for? Like they don't want you to be like corporate. Like, don't
comply.
What I mean? Yeah, don't comply. Yeah, right. And now here we are all these generations later, and it's like they're literally like waving flags for the Democratic Party and campaigning for people and talking about, and I'm like, when did this happen? Like, I thought we didn't like any politics. I thought the idea was that we weren't a part. Like, I get a little uncomfortable when an artist I like endorses a politician. I think your job it's not your job. Your job is to sell. I don't know. I don't know when this became so important that I had to know what the bass player, from Tool thinks about supply side economics. I like it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know. And the problem is, unlike, say, like Nick Cave, who I think walks the perfect line. I mean, Nick Cave was talking about Morrissey last year, defending Morrissey, but also condemning Morrissey in the same breath. He's just so smart that he knows how to speak in a way that he knows he's not going to alienate anybody, but he's also not going to put anybody on a pedestal, because he's smart. And he knows how to speak to people like that. Or like Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters. He's like the nicest guy ever. I'm not a huge fan of the music, but you want to talk about a nice guy. That's a good, nice guy. Like, that guy is very appropriate with everything, everybody. I don't know his politics. I don't care about his politics. Like,
isn't that beautiful though? You don't know his politics. Isn't that great?
I just know he's a good guy. I just know he's nice.
Decent guy. I'm a fan of the Foo Fighters. Jamie's a big fan of the Foo Fighters. So just keep making your music. We love it.
Name a nicer guy. I mean, like, honestly, like if you wanted to pattern a famous, super famous, successful musician, I look at like him and I go, yeah, that's probably the guy, because everybody likes him. Nope. Never says anything stupid, because he's always working and he's always like throwing props to people and like, he's bringing people on stage. He brought the Bad Brains on stage at a fucking Yankee Stadium here. I mean, who that would bring the Bad Brains on stage? I mean, like, he's eulogizing Lemmy and like, it's just like he knows what he's doing, and I just feel like that he's so unique at doing that, but also he's super successful. So I just hope another generation looks at that and goes, hey, I don't need to marry a politic or marry a cause. I could just be a decent person and lead by example. Example. Like, and he's such an admirable person. Yeah, he's so admirable.
It says it all when, Dave Grohl's nickname is literally the nicest guy in rock. That is his nickname. That is what other musicians have nicknamed him. So that says it all about the guy.
He's friends with Slayer. He's friends with he's friends with rappers. He's friends with Slayer. He's friends with Metallica, because there's just something about him. That he knows his responsibility. And I think that's where, and I think where wrestlers fuck this up a lot too, I'll be honest with you. And this is what pisses me off about wrestling a lot. You have I have a responsibility, because I have somehow convinced people that I have some sort of platform. Thus, I have a responsibility. It's a meager responsibility, but it's a responsibility. Just like my kids, if they're responsible to throw the garbage out and they don't do it, and there's garbage all over the house, they took a meager responsibility, didn't do it, and made a bigger problem. So I always feel like, just like when I was on The Soup or like my show, you have a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You have to live by example. You can't just basically spout platitudes and tell people things and then turn around and then you find out that your whole life is completely different than what you're putting out there. Yeah. I've always felt that way. And I think, I hope younger people see people like that and go, well, what if I just want to be a really good guitar player and a good person? So I don't have to cheer for a cause or anything like that. I'm going to just lead by example. That's all, but the problem is there's this social responsibility. There's this social pressure to be like, you got to make it. You better say something about this thing. And it's like, well, I kind of don't want to get involved. Why? Are you bad? Like, what? You don't support this cause? Like, well, no. I mean, like, I have people probably that like me and like what I do that might not agree with this opinion. And I have a responsibility to them, just like I have responsibility to the people that do. So it's just like, music is tricky. It's a tricky example because it's considered very left leaning, but like, like athletes too. Like, seldom do I see, I'm not a big sports person, but I like the New York Mets. That's like the only team I like, the baseball team. But this is a Yankees city. This is a Yankees country. Like the Yankees are like, I like the shittier team versus the really great team. So it's like, if you lived in a town with like 2 great soccer leagues and there's the premier one and then there's the one that ain't that good. Yep. Well, if you just your whole life like the one that ain't that good, you kind of have a little bit of an edge to you. You know what I mean? It's a little cooler to like the team that isn't great, And yeah. I know that's big, like, especially in UK football for sure. Like, yeah, like everybody what was that? Green Street Hooligans?
Yeah,
that movie? Yeah, with Elijah.
Where they took a shit on Manchester, like right off the bat. It was like, Manchester, like, shit club type firm. Like, it's like, I'm sure the person who wrote that was a little bit of a dig, you know what I mean? Or something like that. But like, yeah.
There's warring cities, like Manchester and London are like kind of like the warring cities. Like Manchester's the better city, flat out better city, music scene, everything.
Oh, don't you have to? Are you kidding? I'll talk about that for 10 hours straight if you want.
Yeah. Like Manchester's the place. I fucking love Manchester so much.
Me too.
If I could afford to live there, I would live there because it's just amazing. London's too much. It's almost like its own country. It's just crazy. It's too much.
Well, like what's like the good? Well, what good bands came from London? I mean, like, I know they maybe got famous from playing in London, but did they really come from London? It's like New York City. You can't think of too many great New York City bands. I mean, the first one that pops in my head is probably Kiss, but is Kiss a great band? I don't know. I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like, they're like Anthrax is a really good band from New York City. You know what I mean? Like
the Ramones, New York City.
Yeah, the Ramones. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Ramones. Yeah. I mean, like, but like that's now you're talking about a legendary group. Like, you know what I mean? In New York City, we used to put out legends. We haven't put out a legend in a long time.
Well, yeah.
We haven't put out a legend in this century. New York City, we put out good rap and like a lot of club music that people like, but singer-songwriters, New York City, I don't know. I mean,
I might sound like a grumpy old man, but I kind of feel that way about the UK scene as well. Like, we haven't put out anybody that's really spoke to me in I can't even remember how long, So,
yeah. Well, you guys it's tricky in the UK because you're kind of the model for certain types of music. And I think things like when I was younger, what they call shoegaze and mostly club music, and then you had Britannica, like that big thing that was happening.
Britpop scene,
Britpop scene, like so it's like you guys sort of set the table, but I feel like in certain things, like rock and stuff like that, it just seems like it's so flat. You know what I mean? Like this century. Metal's a little different though. Metal. You guys put out some crazy ass death metal groups and shit.
As far as like rock goes, like we haven't really had like proper like rock bands. I would argue since the 70s, really. Like in the 60s and 70s, we were absolutely killing it. As far as the music.
The 90s, you guys were putting out some great.
And the 90s, yeah. The 60s and 70s were really like the for lack of a better word, golden era.
Oh yeah.
In the 80s, we knocked out some great bands as well. Obviously, the Smiths, the Cure, Joy Division. Such bands.
Yeah. Global music at this point.
Yeah, but yeah, I would say in the last 20 years, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not up to date with things. Maybe I'm just kind of stuck in my little wheelhouse.
I'm the same because I'm exactly the same as you. I can't think of anyone.
When I think of like the last thing that really truly like shook me, it was the grunge scene in the early 90s, like when I was first kind of getting into music, and like we had Mudhoney, Sonic Youth, Screaming Trees, Grantley Buffalo, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, all this, you know, the and that shook me alive. That kind of that made me, it shook me alive. That moment.
Yeah, you guys gave us Radiohead there. That was a nice little run for a while. And Oasis. I mean, Jesus, you know, like these important groups. But I just think culturally speaking, there's responsibilities, and I would love, you know, for more people to be the Dave Grohls. I really would. I think we need more Dave, not even musically, but just personally. Was just like, hey, I'm just playing here to play music. I'm going to play the best music I can. I'm going to play a lot, and I'm going to try to turn you on to some groups along the way. And you know what? Maybe I'll make a left turn and play some cool covers at my concerts and bring some famous people up to play with me. And you know what I mean? And occasionally I'll let a fan come up and play guitar. You know, they do that all the time. So it's just like, you know, because he's a punk, but also I have to remember Dave Grohl at the end of the day, who's my age. Dave Grohl came from the same scene I came from. He came from the punk and hardcore scene. Yeah, you know, he's playing drums as a 14-year-old in Scream from the DC area. Yeah. So it's like, you know, when you come from that scene, and by the way, I'm not going to co-sign him musically, but Henry Rollins, I feels like in a lot of ways represents a lot of good ideology too. I do. Henry Rollins does. Yeah. You know, you could shit on his music, you know, his solo career, a lot of people don't like, but as a smart, articulate, compassionate person, you know what I mean? Like, you know, he's not a druggie, he's not an alky, he's, you know, a fit older punk rock guy who, you know, tells these amazing stories.
I've spent countless hours listening to Henry Rollins' podcasts, him being a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, he's smart.
Yeah, you know? His live shows. I've spent countless hours listening to.
Now he's a funny guy because he is a hardcore punk, old school, first generation, who is as left leaning as you can get. But one of his idols is Ted Nugent, and he tries to reconciles liking Ted Nugent and like that sound, that Detroit, because that's what he grew up listening to was rock. So like even though he doesn't agree with his politics and probably if he wasn't a musician would hate Ted Nugent's guts, that's one of his idols. Lemmy, another one of his idols. He certainly didn't prescribe to Lemmy's lifestyle. Henry Rollins was like a fit guy who probably did 4,000 jumping jacks in the morning, you know? But that's his other idol. You know what I mean? So it's just like, you know, when you're intelligent enough to say, hey, look, I may not agree with everything this person does, but they represent themselves in a way that I appreciate. And I think for our lifetime, Dave Grohl is probably the best example of that. I don't know anybody in the music industry who doesn't love and respect that guy. Not even the music, just the person. Every time I see him talking about something, he's passionate, whether it's Prince or Motorhead or, you know, or like the Bad Brains. It's like he's informed, and he's not trying to get you to give him a pat on the back. He's trying to turn you on to something that's important to him. And he's not doing it in a way that if you don't like this, you're stupid. Like, you know what I mean? That kind of, you know, and that's the way it is now. It's just like, I just feel like now, because these are men who did not grow up in a digital age. So they communicate with us the way we like to be spoken to, and they know how to do that. I saw Henry Rollins do a spoken word up here 4 years ago. I went with a younger punk rock guy up here that I know, and we both walked out of there shaking. I was like, that was amazing. Like, I was just so blown away. Like there's something comforting about when somebody you like, a celebrity, talks to you in a way that makes you think that they're talking to you. You know what I mean? Instead of now, it's just talking down to you. Like, you guys have a lot of probably younger UK famous people, and they immediately just go with whatever the popular cause is. And they basically, you know, tell you, you know, if you're not down with this cause, then fuck you. I don't care if you like me or not, because, like, you know, it's like, well, no, you know, I mean, you should want everybody to like you. You know what I mean? In some regards. And, you know, I just think it's crazy. I just feel like it's a generational thing in certain respects, but also it's a social currency. You know, I talk about a lot on the show, is there is a social currency. If I literally went on Twitter right now and just bashed like conservatives for like a day or 2 days, and I do it occasionally because they do dumb shit, but I also do it when I see I'm not into throwing rocks through Starbucks. I don't think that's helping my life. You're not helping my Black and Muslim and Latino friends doing that. I don't think, you know, if you're living in some rich, affluent white neighborhood and you're a white person who's throwing bricks through Starbucks, but your whole life you don't have any minority friends, you live comfortably, like it's cosplay, it's fake, you know. So like, there's no direct action doing that. And that's a big problem in this country, is that you have a lot of white people who think they're on the side of the angels because they're putting on black clothing and throwing bricks through storefronts, and think that's going to actually do something. And I'm just like, well,
we had the same thing here where people were pulled down a statue down in Bristol of a merchant who dealt with in the slave trade, and I was like, yeah, fuck that guy, biggest statue down, I don't care. But what does it prove? All the photographs and all the footage. I was just like,
what minority's life was better for that happening? Like, why don't you try to, like, I don't know,
really
volunteer? Look, I don't know. You could do something else.
As ugly as what he did is, his fortune back in the day was the foundation for that city. So, and Bristol's full of great universities, colleges, very affluent, very rich.
Yeah.
So I mean,
that's an affluent college town. Isn't Bristol like an affluent college town for the most part?
Yeah. Big university. Big. Yeah, it's very rich. You'd have to be earning a lot of coin to even rent a place there. It's a very, very well-to-do area. So I mean, like, I just feel like these people, like, if they really truly believe it, then, like, just then I don't know, do more. Don't just pull down a statue. That's a great symbol, I suppose. But, like,
yeah, but it didn't really. But nothing changed as a result of
nothing changed. Nothing changed. It's just like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I sound old and fussy. Just lobby the council to get them to take it down. And if they keep lobbying them,
When I see Portland, which is like, a hell, like just a disaster there. You have, like, entire stores just constantly, the Antifa people in Portland, and then you see them get arrested, and they're all like middle class white people. And I'm just saying, like, why don't you take that day, instead of throwing the bricks through Starbucks, why don't you go volunteer at an animal shelter? Why don't you go volunteer in a poor neighborhood? Hey, you know what? A lot of poor neighborhoods got a lot of trash because it's difficult to keep it clean because, there's a lot of reasons for that. Why don't you maybe go and clean out some bad neighborhoods? I don't know. Maybe you could, volunteer for some old people. Like, why not, like, think those things actually make a difference? You know what I'm saying? Like I've never seen somebody's life profoundly changed by throwing a brick through a Starbucks. I have never said, wow, my life is better now. Thank you for throwing that brick through the Starbucks. Like, I think it's just so silly, but they know but that's like an acceptable thing to do now. Throw a brick through a Starbucks in a fancy neighborhood. And it's like, well, the person that works there has got to clean it up. I mean, like, they're not, if they were rich, they wouldn't work there.
Yeah.
Like, Starbucks, it's like so strange. Like, you've just now, like, 3 or 4 people making like minimum wage have to clean up your mess.
Yeah, you got to think about that person, because it's nobody's first choice to go and get a job at Starbucks. It's nobody's first choice. They're literally there in between doing that and getting somewhere else. And you're just making their life a little bit more difficult if you burn the goddamn building down. They've got to.
Well, I also think if these people had jobs and some sort of security and during a pandemic and healthcare, maybe they wouldn't be throwing bricks through Starbucks.
Yeah.
Like, it's a double-edged sword. Like, it's just like working people who are happy, that have things that make them happy, don't do that. No. I don't know. I'm too old to protest. So I'm an old person. Like, to me, I think the best thing you could do is lead by example. Walk the walk and talk the talk. You know what I mean? Like, you have to back up what you say. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that there are a lot of people in my country whose lives are marginalized by the fact that there are prejudiced people in this country who make their lives shitty. Yes, we should do something about that. But I don't think throwing bricks through Starbucks is helping them. I just don't. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I have never seen a neighborhood turned over because you stole from the Foot Locker. I don't think that's going to help. I just don't. I think we need a little bit more direct action for that. But it's funny, like when I was talking about, like, basically using a platform, that's one of the things I think with wrestling that turned me off the most in the last couple of years, is that I found that there was just too many people in the business that were more into social media currency than their own career. And I'm sure you guys know a lot of the people I'm talking about. And the funny thing was, we saw so many of them get exposed in 2020. We saw so many of them get exposed in 2020.
I love it. It sounds really petty, but I just loved it. You know, like when David Starr went down in flames, I was just like, because he was like the ringleader.
Yeah.
Fun.
Interesting guy.
For that what you would call a regressive leftist movement. He was like the king of that.
Did you guys have any UK people like that were that off the cliff, like in terms of like constantly barraging people about like social issues and stuff like that, but also on their real life being complete garbage?
Marty Scurll wasn't really that kind.
Yeah, that's a pretty good example.
You know, he wasn't as bad as David Starr, as like, these are my politics and fuck you, and you're a piece of shit, you're this, that, and the other. But yeah, he was definitely in that circle, and he turned out to be a real.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking Scales just lost his job at Ring of Honor as well? I think it's finally.
Yeah, that's weird because supposedly that was a pretty big contract. No one's really did a deep dive as to what happened there. I heard it was mutual, but I think it maybe had more to do with the fact that when they gave him that contract, this was pre-COVID, and they gave him the book. He was the booker. He was in charge of.
Yeah.
So, but
Jimmy,
that was
Jimmy Havoc as well.
There you go. Yeah.
He wasn't really like.
Nah, he wasn't on the internet.
Yeah. But yeah, he was.
He wasn't on the internet preaching.
He just, a piece of work.
Yeah, he just wasn't a good guy. He just was a bad guy, But yeah, 2020 was it's just so strange how that so many things happened in that period of time, in the year, like that affected that business so negatively, and it's crazy when I think about. I guess speaking out happened right around the time COVID happened. When did that? Was that April?
It was around that same time.
It was about a month into it, wasn't it? I seem to remember late April.
Yeah. Around that time.
Yeah. Crazy.
COVID came around about March, and it's probably around about a month later. It all just seemed to come on, but yeah.
Yeah, very, very odd timing for all of those. Like those two things were really like. I mean, obviously speaking out did not become a bigger thing, which is sad, but it just did. In a lot of ways, at least in the States, it didn't. You would have to tell me, what impact it had in the UK, if any. But
it's kind of dropped off the radar here. I think there's a lot of lawsuits going on at the moment. So I think maybe in a year or so we're going to find out what happened in certain cases. But at the moment it's very quiet.
Yeah, I do think it was brought up in our parliaments. I think the Sports and Culture Committee are looking into it, but I think obviously with things still going on, it's not been made public at the moment. But I do think it's being taken seriously, and there are regulations coming into play. There's going to be rules, checks on trainers, all that kind of stuff. So things are happening. Yeah,
okay, that's good.
Yeah, but it'll be a slow process, though. I mean,
it'll be a slow process.
It'll be a slow process.
Now, do you guys think if COVID didn't happen, do you think it would have been a bigger story in the UK, or more proactive things would have happened? Because obviously, COVID is a much bigger circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
I would like to think so. Yeah, I would like to think so. But yeah, sadly, COVID's taken over everything. I mean, it's the biggest heel out there at the moment. Is
COVID.
I
mean, COVID is over. I mean, when we say over, we mean over in the business sense, not over.
Yeah.
COVID is the most over heel in the business.
COVID is like the early 2000s Triple H reign of terror. It just
you just can't beat him. You just
can't beat it. Exactly.
Can't beat him. He's got to win every match.
But it's literally pedigree and Booker T, and then not pinning him for 20 seconds, and then still getting the goddamn pin.
COVID is Hollywood Hogan. That's what it is. COVID is the Hollywood Hogan of viruses.
Yeah.
When I guess we spoke. When did we speak? Well, October. I think it was around October. Has there? I don't feel like there has been any real progress in terms of wrestling going back to normal. I mean, I don't know.
Is NXT UK started again, Jeremy?
That's the only thing we've got in the UK that is UK based is NXT UK. None of the other companies have been show since February, March time.
Wow.
NXT UK is all we've got.
Wow.
I mean, to be fair, they're putting on very good shows. They've got great talent. But that is all we've got. There's no shows. There's nothing. It's just everything stopped. Everything has stopped.
Wow.
I mean, I'm heavily in watching very much the American indies at the moment, which are keeping me going. I've discovered so many new companies like Synergy in New Jersey and like Black Label Pro and things like that. Yeah, I'm getting into a lot of them. But like I say, we've got nothing apart from NXT UK. We have nothing, no wrestling over here.
Are there shows? Are there starting shows that get independent shows again in America? Is there anything going on at the moment?
Only a couple of states, but
right.
You know, they're very low key, they're very low attended because they're not attracting the big talent because the big talent doesn't want to get COVID. So there was a story, I talked about it a little bit on the internet a couple weeks ago. So there was Warhorse, who's a big indie person here, obviously. So Warhorse,
I've seen him on AEW.
Yeah, he makes a living in the indies, but he's pretty well known. He's pretty popular on social media. I don't know what state it was in, but I think it was like, you know, not one of our major metropolitan areas, let's just say. And there was Warhorse showed up to do a show, and it was, you know, they had supposed to have social distancing at the show, and he left before he was supposed to perform because there were too many people not wearing masks, and he was the main attraction. And there was only about 100 people at the show.
Yeah, I read about that. I did. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are doing the best they can. I mean, obviously GCW have been doing a great job.
Yeah, I mean they're going to some interesting states. I mean they can't perform where they want. They're based out of New Jersey. They can't perform there really. Yeah. That's for sure. I honestly don't know what. So to me, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, obviously there has to be some kind of business happening here. We have to have these shows, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is, you're going to have two segments of the population that might not show up. The first segment is the people that are afraid of getting sick. And then there's the second segment that no one in the business talks about, except me, and I'm not in the business, is that people might not have the money to go to these things anymore because they're unemployed and broke. And that should scare, and I have this conversation with my brother in the music world because what my family's involved in a lot of the music business. And, you know, that to me is a bigger thing than the people getting sick, because you might be able to change your mind or your opinion about being worried about getting COVID if you go, but you can't put money in the bank magically, like you don't have. And the people that were dedicated to these things, as you guys know as well, you know, this is not a cheap venture. You know, you order pay-per-views, you buy merch, you go to the attendance. The tickets are not cheap necessarily. You know, you buy food and beer and whatever at the events. Traveling to the event is an expense. So, you know, whereas before people were a little bit more financially secure, that they justified this expense. This is one of the first things that people will stop doing immediately. You know, how many people do you know that when COVID hit, like I know maybe in this country for sure, one of the first things they did was they started cutting down on things like cable, like paid cable. Like, you know, they got rid of their their movie channels on the cable package, you know, because they were like, well, I can't spend an extra $60 a month on cable. You know, that sort of thing.
I ditched certain streaming services.
There you go. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. So it's like, you know, so that's a nominal thing to do. You know, now you're talking about somebody that maybe would spend, you know, $150 at an indie show between the tickets and the transportation and the food and the hanging out after and the getting the drinks before and the getting the drinks after and buying the Warhorse shirt or whatever. There's people that are not going to have money to do this. Like, they just don't have the income anymore. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's no answer for that. You know, like you could tell me in 3 months that, well, everything's going to be better now. We're all going to have shots and we're all going to go to these things. But what if I can't afford to go now, when I could have afforded to go a year ago? I can't afford. There's plenty of things I can't afford to do now that I could afford to do a year ago. And I'm not in the minority. I'm in the majority of people. You know, like, you know, unfortunately, I lost my actual job to COVID in September, but I'm in a you know, double income family, so it's a little different for me. But like, I don't have the same disposable income as I did last WrestleMania season. You know what I mean? And most people don't. So I think that's a big thing that no one in the industry is sort of addressing. You know, if you ever get a chance, you should do this, because I'm curious what you think. I don't know how much you think it costs to go see Raw on Monday nights, but the tickets are like ridiculous. Like the good seats are like hundreds, if not thousands of dollars.
Thousands of dollars.
Thousands
of dollars.
It's the same when they come over here, because we usually get like twice a year they'll come and take Raw SmackDown over here, and it's the same over here. You could be front row tickets. You could be looking about £400.
Oh, easily, maybe more than that.
You know, I mean, I've been to a few, but I mean, I've got the nosebleeds. I'm not paying that kind, especially for Raw. I'm not paying that much for Raw.
I haven't been to a Raw, but I went to Raw up here in upstate New York about 5 years ago, and it was Randy feuding with Seth when Seth had the J&J security, and it was terrible. I mean, it was just it was bad.
I mean, as amazing in ring talent as Dana Brooke is, I think £400 is a little steep.
So I think I'm more concerned about the economics of it now. Like, you know, I'm still concerned about the virus, as we all should be, and you should be as well. But I don't know. Now you're asking a lot of me as a fan to say, hey, we're going to have this great show. You're going to sit elbow to elbow with everybody again. Isn't that great? You're like, well, I haven't done that in a year. I don't know if I want to do that right now. How much is it? Well, it's still the same overpriced crap that it was a year ago. And you're like, well, I don't really have that kind of money this year. I probably just can't go. And then that's the real fallout of the virus, is the economic side of it for wrestling.
And also, like, you speak about being elbow. Sorry.
No, because I never you mentioned it. Because it's the same over here. We've had there's millions that have lost their jobs over here already.
Oh yeah, I know.
The pandemic. So yeah, you're right. I mean, the British thing is going to be the same. The economic impact of it. You're right. I didn't think about that. Foolishly, I don't know why it didn't cross my mind.
Well, because your priority is not getting sick right now. I mean, your priority is, hey, I can't get sick. I don't want to get sick. I don't want my family to get sick. I don't want my people in my life that I care about to get sick. I don't want to lose anybody to this. You know, so that's going to be the priority for a little while longer.
Absolutely. You know, it is my priority. I mean, like I said, I work at the hospital, and we've been asked. I've been asked, and a few of us, to go and work on that area of the COVID ward, the vaccine areas, and part of me is like, yes, I want to do it, but the other part of me is like, you know, my parents are in the late 60s. My dad's also diabetic. You know, if I go and visit them, am I going to give them something? So that's on my mind. But
and this is not getting fixed, you know, by WrestleMania. I mean, it's just it's
no.
It's
I was
just
about
not.
to ask, when you talk about crowds, like, when do you think, or when would you predict that maybe they're going to have some kind of live audience back? You know, when do you reckon? I think maybe later on in the year.
I think late in the year. Late in the year. I think the fall, and I think that's for concerts. I think that's for a lot of things. You know, my background is really in music, so, like, you know, I have friends that are touring musicians that, you know, have canceled. My brother was supposed to go to the UK. My brother Mark was doing some huge shows in the UK that got canceled. You know, hopefully he'll be going back. I don't know if he's going back. But he thinks he's going back. But I think the spring, I think right now the winter, and you also have to remember too, like, America sort of is in a bad place right now, sort of socially. So it's like, you know, I don't know how comfortable people would be going to things, because there's a lot of unrest. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of craziness going on. So let's say the winter kind of calms down, and then we have the nicer weather, like in the Northeast where I live. So the spring, you're going to see people probably try to push to go to do things again. But, you know, the other side of this is, and I don't know about the UK, and this is the same thing for wrestling, because it's all relative. There is about 40% of the population refuses to get vaccinated here. They will not get vaccinated. That might preclude them.
There's a fair few here refusing to do it as well.
Yeah, no, 40% is, I mean, we're talking about like, you know, 150 million people now that were basically saying, I am not getting vaccinated and you can't force me. And, you know, that's scary, because these people are going to try to show up and go to wrestling and go to bars and go to restaurants and go to the movies and go to the theater. And then when they're going to be asked to prove that they don't have this thing, they're going to throw a tantrum and start a lot of trouble. And I'm telling you, they're not going to be shy or quiet about it. They're going to be angry about it. There is going to be violence. there is going to be people getting hurt, if not killed, because they spent money. And even though they knew that they couldn't go and do this thing without the vaccine, but because it's not federally mandated in this country, which I think it might be, I really do, because that's how. I mean, you can go. I could send you in 2 seconds 5 different YouTube videos today alone of people fighting in supermarkets over masks. Because you have people purposely showing. Oh yeah, it's huge. Now, yeah, fighting, and I now, look, obviously, there's a health crisis going on. There's a pandemic that says, hey, just wear a mask and social distance while you're in this store. There are people that are like, I'm not going to wear a mask and I'm not going to social distance, and fuck you if you try to make me. Well, what are we going to do with these people? Because they're going to show up to everything that you're going to want to go to. They're going to try to go to wrestling shows. They're going to try to go to concerts. They're going to try to go to the movies. They're going to try to go to your favorite bar. Whose responsibility is it going to be to handle this? Like, we like, because like, are people going to start getting shot over this stuff? Like, it's crazy. There's been fist fights and arrests and constant. I see stuff in the UK too on like the subway system there. I saw some stuff. Some people posted videos. But it's like, what are you going to do? Because I know there's a massive pushback against masks in the UK, right?
There was. It's actually now. I think this past week or so they've made it mandatory. So you cannot go into a supermarket. You can't go into a shop or anything without a mask on. And they actually have security. They've got security on the doors now. And if you haven't got it, you're not coming in. And we are seeing a lot more people complying with it. I've seen the numbers as well. The vaccine numbers are actually going up. There's a lot more people now wanting the vaccine. So things are looking more positive on that front over here. The issue at the minute is the infection rates are just going through the roof at the moment.
Yeah, us too.
That's the main thing.
And we're getting all these freaky new strains from South Africa and Brazil.
Yeah.
One from Brazil now, or something like that. And I'm just like, what next,
Yeah, so. I mean, wrestling has to adapt. I don't know how the best way for them to adapt is, because they have such a very specific business model. They've somehow managed to survive audience-less, but I think the ratings have shown that people don't really want to see that. Like, I know I have trouble watching audience-less wrestling. I do. But I also don't want... I cringe every Friday when I watch SmackDown, which I haven't been watching that much, because the canned audience is so loud. The fake audience noises, it takes me out of it. It's not genuine, so that's not very enjoyable. We have, sports. I think we just had like some football playoffs here, and stadiums that held 70,000 people were allowed to have 10%. So Buffalo, New York, up further north where I live, the Buffalo Bills are going to go to the NFL playoffs, and like they were allowed to have 6,700 people in a stadium of 70,000.
Yeah.
I mean, does that sound like? I mean, it's just like, so what? So is that? And they considered that a major accomplishment here, that they were allowed to get that many people in there. And I'm like, it is. Like, what's going to happen to the concerts, to the bands that, like, some of us like that aren't that famous, that only have 400 or 500 people show up? Now they're going to have 25. Are they going to have 40? That doesn't seem like a good business model to me.
No. And it's pretty similar over here with our football as well. Like, certain areas where the infections are low, the government are allowing certain amounts of fans in. Like, some teams have been allowed 2,000 supporters, some have been allowed 4,000 supporters. But I'm like you, I just haven't been able to get into it. It's just I'm missing that full stadium, that audience. Like with the wrestling, I'm finding it so difficult to watch Raw and SmackDown. Yeah. Well, I find it difficult to watch Raw anyway at the moment.
Yeah. To be honest with you, even before there was no audience, I was finding it exceptionally difficult to watch.
Well, that was the problem too. Yeah. I mean, so prior to that, it wasn't exactly like everything was great. So I think it's going to be a real challenge, especially for like an AEW, which is still a fairly new company that's living and dying, basically on one show a week, essentially in the same place over and over again with limited people in it, very few people allowed to be in there. They had touring dates set up where they were selling some tickets in some markets. That's all canceled. They might not sell those tickets again because that market might be a high unemployment rate. So it's just like, I don't know if someone's going to want to spend $400 to watch that show. So that's where I don't know what the solution is. I think we have a long way to go. I definitely don't think it's going to get fixed, between now and like Mania. I find that hard to believe. And Mania is supposed to be where, in California this year?
Florida.
Yeah, I think it was California.
Yeah. Yes. Was it? Yeah. Was
LA.
it
LA. Yeah, it was LA. Yeah. LA is a disaster. I mean, LA is in worse shape than almost anywhere than any city in the States. There is no chance they would allow WrestleMania in Los Angeles in April. There's no chance.
Yeah, I keep all the podcasts that I've listened to like recently, like Joe Rogan and stuff. It seems like there's a mass exodus of people leaving California because I guess something to do with the higher tax rates or something.
Yeah.
And LA, I think there's a huge homeless problem, like these tent cities and things like that.
Yeah.
Where they're popping up all around, they're popping up all around prime real estate, and obviously the people that are rich are kind of like, no, I don't really like that, so they're kind of they're sailing ship, they're getting out of there.
Yeah, their infection rate is very bad because it's a huge city. So, and it's a huge city of industry in terms of like the entertainment business. One of the things like that I think wrestling's going to have a bigger problem with than other things is that it just seems like it's more of a disposable environment. Whereas people would die without football in the UK or die without baseball or whatever. It's just, I don't know. Like, it's nice that I know people are anxious to go back to try to go see Raw or AEW or GCW, or whatever. By the way, New Japan, I don't know if you guys know this, but the New Year's Dash, the Tokyo Dome, which holds 80,000 people, they only had 11,000 people allowed in there. So It's like, this is a global problem. This is a global.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. It is a global problem. This is it. I was saying to somebody the other day that it is absolutely incredible that it is literally every single part of the world is affected by this. It's ridiculous. It really is.
Yeah. Except the rich people.
Well, obviously.
Except the wealthy.
But thank God that they were there to sing Imagine.
Yes, thank God. Thank God they were there to remind us.
Thank God.
They had to remind us. I'm curious to see what happens, now with wrestling. Like, I'm curious because I'm hanging on by such a thin veneer of interest because between the poor television programming, the poor TV shows, the audience-less shows, and, now you combine that with the fact that it would appear that we're not probably going to have all the shows that everyone thought they could go to in the new year from 2021, they might not be able to go to again. So you have Rumble. I don't know if they're going to have people at the Rumble. I don't think so.
I doubt it. Yeah.
I doubt it. And then you have Mania. Usually at this point in time, aren't we getting clubbed to death with WrestleMania reminders?
Yes. Constantly. I'm looking at one.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
last
year
at this time.
Yeah.
Notice they're not saying that anymore.
No, that's a good point. I'd love to know what's going through Vince McMahon's mind right now. That's something I'd love to know.
Steroids and
steroids,
hair cream and probably
dementia.
Some dementia. Probably some form of dementia.
That as well. Yeah. Probably that as well.
I wonder what they're going to do. I mean, I honestly I'm very interested in what happens now, how they get back, because they were having a lot of trouble. Like, house shows were already going away anyway for being so poorly attended. I think just recently NXT had the second worst rating they've ever had ever.
Oh, really?
Ever. The second worst of all time.
Yeah.
Can't ignore that. And AEW doesn't seem like they're going to.
I watched the latest episode. I watched the latest episode of NXT, and I was just it was. I'm going to sound like a real boring old fart, but it was too flippy. All the wrestlers
seem like I mean, they've always been a little twinky.
It seemed like a real indie show, a bit too indie for me, for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's also because Cross wasn't on. I mean, when Cross kind of came there and just was killing people, I was like, okay, this is great. I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. He's very, very friendly with my brother in real life. So, he's a guy I'm just going to jump up and down about no matter what, because he's an awesome
He's a beast.
But he's also, by the way, he's also great. He's also great. He's really good. So like, he's a wrestler. I see him and I go, that's a wrestler. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, he works really hard and he deserves everything. And then he got hurt and I was like, oh shit, this is so bad. And, he worked his ass off to come back and he's finally back. And now he's back to like a COVID list. It seems like NXT actually, everybody's even smaller than they were. Like, I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah.
It's like they went from being like hobbits to like dwarfs. Like, I don't know. They're so like they signed MSK, the Radicals guys, and those guys are great. I think those guys are very talented, but they're like 5'6". I mean, they're really small guys, and it's just like, oh look, we got more 5'7" guys now in NXT. This is good. It's like they have no big beastly dudes. They have like, you can count on one hand the amount of sizable like wrestlers that they have there. And
yeah.
What's that?
Sorry, John. I was going to say, speaking of that, did you see Jim Cornette's comments about Johnny Gargano?
No.
What did he say?
He's come out and he's basically buried Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae. Gargano has no business in a wrestling ring. He just comes out and does moves. They should just pay him to basically go to the performance center and train people because he has no personality, no business being there. So that was Cornette there. Gargano, yeah.
Well, I think Johnny's in-ring stuff is great. I think this heel stuff is very forced. It just seems so forced. Like they didn't know what else to do with him, so they turned him into like, I mean, you can't be a 5'5" heel and get me that upset because I'll just pat you on the head and like we'll go on my day. Like you can't like he's not a good bad guy. Like, you know what I mean? It's not believable. His in-ring stuff is awesome. He's had some of the best matches of the century. I think he's probably been in more 4 or 5 star matches in America, maybe than 95% of people in the business.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He has. Yeah. He has. I know my brother's not big on him at all. I know that, but like, I think it's more of his size, and it's not always about size. I feel like whenever I say that, people are just immediately like, oh, it's size. I'm like, no, but if you're not, look, Daniel Bryan doesn't have size. He's amazing. Like, you know what I mean? So, CM Punk didn't have size and he was pretty amazing. So it's like,
Daniel Bryan looks grizzly though, doesn't he? He looks kind of grizzly and weathered.
Well, his shit looks real. His shit looks good. Yeah, I mean, he was trained. His shit looks good. Johnny's stuff looks great. Who says Johnny's bad in the ring? You could say he's too small. You could say his gimmick's not good. You could say he's goofy, whatever. But his in-ring stuff?
Yeah.
I saw him 3 years ago up here when the last year they had NXT in my town in upstate New York. The main event was him versus Dream. And it was awesome. And I sat in the second row, man, and it was great. It was great. They were both great. They put on a great show. But Johnny is, I mean, oh my God, he is a tiny man. He is a little guy. I don't know what's next for 2021 in terms of the business. I think they're going to have to keep doing what they're doing, which unfortunately is not good. But I also think before audiences come back, they even to a lesser extent, AEW, certainly NXT, all the major Raw brands, they need to put more stuff on the table because it's going to be harder to get people to come back.
Yeah.
And, like, would any of us pay for what we're going to see tonight on SmackDown? No.
Mm-mm.
Well, John, let me ask you this. Speaking of things that we don't really want to pay for, how do we fix Drew McIntyre? Because to me, he looks great. I can't tell if he's a bad promo because everything's scripted these days. So I don't know. I don't know. But how do we?
He should be a heel. You make him a heel, and you don't talk to him that much. Honestly, look. How did they fix Roman? How did they fix
exactly?
Roman?
Yeah. Because it seems to me that they do the same mistake over and over again with these top baby faces. They try to make them into John Cena.
Yep.
These kind of like, and it's just like, why didn't you just leave Drew McIntyre as the Scottish psychopath, but just make him fight heels? And ergo, he's a babyface now.
Yeah.
But you can still be that ruthless psychopath. Steve Austin didn't really change up his gimmick. He just started fighting heels, and he's a babyface, you know?
Yeah, but Steve Austin wasn't spouting like popular internet meme platitudes.
Well, that's true. That's the other problem as well.
Drew's oh, there was a dancing baby I saw on the internet the other day. You're like the dancing baby I saw. It's like, stop. like Like anything that was popular this week is something he'll say. Like it's just like,
yeah,
like it's just, and the dye job. He's a young guy. Why is he dyeing his hair like that?
Dyeing his hair, yeah.
He's dyeing his hair like somebody's great uncle, like in a horror movie or something. Like he doesn't have the personality. You can't force that on people. Like they will reject it. They will reject it.
Yeah.
He's not terrible in the ring. I'm not saying he's but his talk, he talks so much for a guy who can't talk. He talks so, and they have him like anything. Like if there was like a drown, if like a baby fell in a well, he'd be like, I want to talk about the baby in the well. And it's like, no, don't. You're a wrestler on TV. Don't stop.
Just take action. Little words.
Few words, take action. You know what I mean?
Like, he looks great. He's pretty decent in the ring. You know.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
He's put on some pretty good matches recently. Like that Roman Reigns match was with him I thought was really good.
Yeah.
But
I thought that was kind of like he's not a top guy, dude. I'm sorry.
No. This is what I mean. Like they need to fix him, and I don't think putting him in a match against Goldberg is going to kind of.
Oh God.
That was my next question, actually, John. Is what is your thoughts on Goldberg being brought back at the moment?
Sadly, the people in the back still think Goldberg means something. There are people probably making decisions that think, you know what, we could probably get another 50,000 people to watch if Goldberg is on. We could probably get another 60,000 people to order the pay-per-view if they think Goldberg's going to win the title again. Because it's so funny how these two companies are defining themselves, like AEW and WWE are defining themselves on things that worked 20, 30 years ago, when nothing in society right now is functional that worked 20, 30 years ago. No sport is the same as it was 20, 30 years ago. No, politics isn't the same. Industries aren't the same. The way we interact with each other isn't the same. But for some reason, these people still think that it's the mid-90s and that if we just do the things that people liked when this was more popular, they'll watch again. Like the Sting thing is a perfect example. I love Sting. I am a super fan. I am a lifelong fan of Sting. I had pictures of Sting on my wall as a teenager. Me and my brother Kevin, he's easily in our top 3 or 4 forever and ever and ever. That doesn't mean I want to see him. I'm 49. He's 61. I don't need to see him on TV. Nope. Give me a new Sting. Give me a new CM Punk. Why don't you find a new CM Punk or a new Rock or a new Austin? And yes, these people are lightning in a bottle, but they're really not so much. Like you've made them before. You can create them again. Like, why don't we have instead of bringing back, keeping Randy Orton around here for 25 years and putting Ric Flair on TV and bringing back Goldberg? And why aren't we making new Ric Flairs? Why aren't we making new Goldbergs? Why didn't Drew McIntyre? Why didn't you say, Drew, we're going to make you like Goldberg. You're very little. You're almost never going to talk. You're going to be the Scottish psychopath. And you're just going to kill people. And whenever they put a mic in front of you, you're going to give the person a dirty look and they're going to cower away. How hard is that? But no, no, because they want Drew to cut promos about like child diabetes or something. It's like they can't get out of their own way. Like, you know what I mean? Like you would have never seen Hollywood Hogan at the height of his heeldom when like 4 million people were watching that show, 5 million people, and they were selling out everywhere. I just want to break character right now and say that the NWA does not support the insurrection at the Capitol building, brother. Like, no, he was constantly an asshole because you didn't break, you like, it's like this thing where it's like, we got to make everybody likable and everybody's got to be, doing things for the children cancer stuff. But it's like, no, we're trying to escape real life by watching your show.
Yeah. It's so distracting as well when you see a heel on social media doing like a really nice thing for a charity. I mean, that's great that they're doing that for the charity, but you're a heel. Can you not do that privately? Can you not just do that privately?
Yeah, do it privately. Yeah, exactly. Do it in your real name, in your real life.
Yeah.
Do it in your real name, in your real life. It still means something, but I got to get the social currency for doing it. Yeah. It's like, it's embarrassing. I don't understand why they keep making these mistakes.
And speaking of, obviously, another one, Triple H came back on Raw as well. So that's another guy they've called back upon to come back. I don't know if this is it.
Did you notice though how he was wearing a shirt and jeans?
Yeah, I said it on Twitter immediately. I go, you didn't take his shirt off.
Is that telling him something? Like, why is he wrestling in a shirt? What's going
on?
I
think they wanted to make it seem like he didn't. Well, like if you don't take your shirt off, it'll seem like you didn't really want to do the match, and they made you do it. Like like you were forced to step up. Yeah. Like because Randy called you out and all that. Like I don't need to see. dude, that show had Triple H in the main event, had Ric Flair on it. Like talk of Goldberg. It's 2021. Like what? Like, what? Are you that lazy that you can't create new people? Like they had some things that they could have worked with. Like I definitely think Cross could be a huge heel character for them in the main roster. Otis was
fumble the ball.
Oh, they're gonna fuck that up totally. Look at Otis a year ago going to Mania. Otis was white hot. I didn't like the character, but he was white hot. What did they do? They fucked that character up pretty quick. It's like they can't.
They had absolute gold with Aleister Black. Absolute.
Perfect. Yeah, messed him up too.
Beyond belief, and he's never going to come back. Obviously,
no, he can't come back. He wanted to go back to NXT because he knew he was fucked.
And
that's why they let Finn go back. Yeah.
Now that his wife's been fired, he can't possibly. I think he's just going to wait his contract out.
He's gonna
He'll be turning up in AEW in about a year.
Absolutely.
Tommy End again.
And they'll make him a killer. And he'll be a killer there. And like we'll be like, wow, why wasn't he a killer over here? It's like, oh, because they wanted him to talk about children's diabetes or something. Like it's the same
just
thing.
Turned him into a pirate. Let's put a black eye on you and like have you wear that.
Yeah, they made him a pirate. I mean, it's like it's so embarrassing. Like, and they make
all
these mistakes.
All they have to do to make that guy is on his debut night. Undertaker's in the ring cutting a promo. The lights go out. They come back on again. Aleister Black stood there. He spin kicks the Undertaker's head off. Bang.
Yeah.
The
only good thing they've done in the last couple of years, I think the Otis thing was organic. The fans sort of made that happen.
Yeah.
But also the Fiend, the Fiend was working. The Fiend was over. People were into the Fiend. People were into and it had all the characteristics of being a long-term big thing for them. But they took a weird turn with it, and then they did this, and then they did that. It's like they just they had to have him job out, like they jobbed him out again. It's like there's two things I think that you could do to make somebody really big in wrestling, and they're basic things. One is never have them lose. There's something about seeing a guy that doesn't lose. He just doesn't lose.
Yeah.
Like Cross. Yeah. Cross had to kill Damian Priest. He had to. Damian Priest I think is getting moved up, but Cross had to. He can't lose. Like he can't lose. That's what they did with Keith Lee for a while too. Don't lose. The other thing is, if he's not a good talker, find a reason around him to not talk. You have 30 writers in the back. You can't come up with a creative reason why he doesn't speak. Like I like Keith Lee, but Keith Lee feels like he just learned the lines and he doesn't want to forget them, so he has to say them very slow and in a very weird voice in order to sell it, and it doesn't seem authentic to me. Like no. I think. Like New Day, that seemed, as much as it got annoying after a while, it seemed very authentic. Like they were having fun. They liked what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like I get the impression that like Keith Lee doesn't like the lines they gave him, and he's like, like he doesn't know like how to deliver them or whatever. It's like I feel like a lot of people there are just going through the motion.
I'm glad you said that because I think exactly the same with Keith Lee. I like him. I think he's a great talent.
Right.
His promos just put me off. I don't like the way
it's almost like he's not a fully trained theater actor. So like, don't give him fucking lines.
That's the thing.
Give him some bullet points. Give him some bullet points and let him riff.
Yeah, I'm not watching the show to watch Keith Lee go hickory dickory dock. The mouse is you when I punch you in the face. Like, no, I want to see the match. I want to see the. Like, yeah, I like the ancillary things like the talking and but like there's people that are very good at it and there's people who suck at it. The people who suck at it for some reason tend to keep being force-fed to do this all the time. It's like if I'm bad at math, but I'm really, really good at English, but you're constantly trying to have me like do math stuff. You're gonna be like, wow, this guy really sucks at math. It's like, I don't understand. Like, you don't have to be good, a 4 or 5 tool player in that game. You know what I mean? Like, there's baseball players that are, because that's my sport. There's baseball players that are what we call 4 or 5 tool athletes. That means they're good at basically everything. And then there's guys like just basically, he's either going to hit a home run or he's going to strike out. That's it. That's all he's going to do. Hit a home run or he's going to strike out. There's a guy who's a great fielder, who's amazing on the field. But guess what? If the game is close, he's probably not going to get a hit because he's not that great at the plate, but he's a great defensive infielder. It's like they think everybody is a 5-tool player.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. You need to especially in this era where you're living and dying on TV. So it's like, and I understand it's a TV show at the end of the day, but you should find a way like the way they did. I think in the 90s was a good example of that. They found a way to accent the things that people were really good at. and can you imagine if they never let The Rock cut a promo when he was Rocky Maivia? I mean, what a waste! I mean, think about, or if Steve Austin was the ringmaster the whole time with a manager.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these things happen by happy accidents, or if CM Punk never did the pipe bomb, like if he never got to do that. I mean, but it's like, you knew you had this lightning in a bottle, or Daniel Bryan, if he didn't steal the Yes Movement from that UFC guy that he stole it from, that no one ever talks about. But it's just like, it's, to me, it's like, you're trying to make everybody good at everything. And there's people like a Johnny Gargano who's great in the ring, but is a very weak bad guy, like a very weak promo guy. Like, or you got a guy like Adam Cole who's great at pretty much everything, but he's very small. So the last thing you want to do is put him on TV and put him in a match with a guy 10 feet taller than him, because it's going to look ridiculous. You know what I mean? Well, you got a guy like a Finn Balor who's more or less good at pretty much all these little things, more or less. I mean, he's adequate, in certain regards, but it's like, I just feel like somebody needs to step up and go, Keith Lee sucks at cutting promos. Can we stop cutting promos with Keith Lee? It's like, am I going to stop watching if I'm a fan of Keith Lee? He hasn't cut a promo in 4 weeks. Does Drew really have to spout anything that was popular on Twitter that day? Can he just be the champ who doesn't? I do all my talking in the ring.
Yeah.
From now on, I'm only going to talk in the ring. I'm going to talk with this. I'm going to talk with my Claymore, and that's it. Case closed. That's it. It's like, I do that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's that hard.
Just have him go around headbutting everybody, backstage, just headbutting people and throwing people through window, just killing people.
I would like to see them make some. I think if this is a Mania where it's going to be audienceless, and as the interest of it won't be as the interest isn't really there. I think the best time to this is a good time to kind of reset. I think, for all, reset everything. Just reset. NXT doesn't need to be 2 hours. I would make NXT 1 hour and make it a really good 1 hour wrestling show, like the way it used to be when it was on the network, that we all went, wow, NXT was great, before it came to the USA Network. I think they need to stop too many people talking on both shows, and it's a time killer because it's TV. Talking sucks up time, so that's less in-ring time. But that also means that's less time to get people over in the ring. You get over in the ring. You don't get over on the mic. We'll decide if we, for example, the Radicals guys, right? They had a great match. That was a great wrestling match on TV. I don't care if I ever hear them talk ever. I could care less. If they keep having matches like that on TV, that was very flippy, but they're small. That's what flippy guys do. They're small, right? I'm going to be interested in what they do. I like the Young Bucks until I started hearing them talk a lot. And then I was like, oh, this is droning. I can't take it anymore. It's like, I just can't. I can't. Like, the more they talk, the less I like them. Kenny was the same thing. Before Kenny came to the States, I thought Kenny was the best wrestler in the world. Now I don't think he's even in the top 10. I just don't. Because I don't think he's trying as hard, because he doesn't have to. It's too much talking. There's a lot of talking going on. I know it's part of the business. The thing is, you can get away with a lot of talking when the in-ring stuff is good too. When the in-ring stuff mostly sucks and the talking sucks, what are we watching for?
Absolutely. Well, we've almost got an hour and a half, John. So what I'm going to do, before we wrap it up, I'm going to ask you this one question. Who's winning the Rumble?
Well, I actually thought the thing would have been, and I'm probably wrong, I actually thought it was going to be Daniel Bryan, and that they were going to have Daniel Bryan be the person to stop this Roman thing. Because he's the most popular. He seems the most likely. A lot of people are telling me I'm wrong. I just feel like that's what they've been, in my wrestling knowledge, that's what I feel like I've been set up for. And that, by the way, that's a good story. I like that. Daniel Bryan's a top guy. He's, he's a great champion. People would accept him. Roman losing clean to Daniel Bryan doesn't stop the Roman train. It just stops. It puts, you know what I mean? It doesn't hurt Roman, because Daniel's so goddamn famous and so popular. So it's like, that's the only person I think that could beat Roman at Mania. And people would go, I'm good with this. I'm okay with this. This works for me. Yeah. But everybody's telling me I'm wrong. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I actually agree with you. I'm actually 100% the same. I'm thinking Daniel Bryan and him and Roman at Mania. Exactly what you just said.
I was thinking Daniel Bryan and Roman at Mania, but I think Roman's going to win. I think Roman's going to hold that title for a good year, I think.
Oh, you think Roman wins at Mania?
I think he's going to hang on to it, yeah. And he's going to hold that title until audiences are back, and then he's going to drop it to somebody, whoever the next big thing is, maybe a Keith Lee, if they don't fuck him up. I would love to see Daniel Bryan win it back, though, because I feel like back in 2014 when he won it and he had the big kind of, the big Mania event, main event, he didn't get a chance to run with the ball, obviously, because he had his concussion issues and stuff. So it'd be nice for them to kind of wrap up that. And I've heard rumours as well that he's kind of on his way out as far as his in-ring career goes.
Yeah,
so I've nice heard that. Send-off for him. If you win the title one more time, it'd be a nice little send-off, you know. So
yeah, I think that's. Well, but that's a good main event for Mania, especially with no audience. And I think people would accept that. It doesn't hurt Roman. It doesn't, because it's Daniel Bryan. You know what I mean? It's Daniel Bryan. I mean, it doesn't hurt Roman. Anyone else
Roman's
might.
Bulletproof.
Yeah. And they're doing a good job with that, because he's got Paul, and when he's talking, he's just being an asshole to everybody. Yeah. He's not being like, I'm at the head of the table, but you know what? There's a lot of people who can't eat at the table, and we need to look out for those people. Anyway, I'm back. It's like that's like a Drew.
And all of his wins have been dirty finishes. He hasn't won one match clean, really.
Like a heel.
And he still looks super strong and great because he's a heel. He's supposed to cheat to win.
He's killing it. Dude, he's killing it. Like, who would have thought a year ago we'd be having this conversation, honestly? He's killing it. He's carrying that show, like, in a lot of ways.
It's what I've always wanted, though. It's what I've always wanted, him to be like the heel.
Now, what do you guys – now, let me ask you guys a question. This is what I think, and you guys will have to come back to this when it gets closer to Mania. What if they build this up, like I said, Daniel wins the Rumble – like in a squeak finish, like with somebody like maybe like him and Keith Lee, it comes out something like that or whatever. Anyway, Daniel wins the Rumble and Daniel beats Roman. And then the next night, Roman shows up on Raw for the first time in 6 months or something. And then Paul Heyman goes, we got screwed out of the title. Now we came back here to do what we did on SmackDown on Raw. And that's a good way that's a nice segue now. Now you have this excitement about Monday. And now it's like, Roman is they're going to be killing people every night now. They're going to be killing people every night. Yeah. Now Roman gets to kill new people on a different night, on a different show. And Daniel Bryan is famous enough for Fox to go, okay, he's one of your more popular performers. He's the champ right now. And then they'll give him a feud with God knows who. And then you flip somebody out. Maybe you flip Randy over to SmackDown. And you're like, okay, Randy was just killing people on Mondays. Now he's going to try to kill people on Fridays. And he's going to attack Daniel Bryan on SmackDown on Friday, even though we don't even know that he's on the roster. Like, I think that's a good way to go, just to kind of flip it up a little bit. I hope they do that. I really do. I hope
that'd be nice. I'd go with that. Yep.
Yeah, maybe when we get closer, we'll see how right I was.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a prediction show before Mania.
Definitely.
Yeah.
One last very quick thing as well. Where do you think Brock Lesnar fits into all this? Do you think Lesnar's going to come back? I mean, obviously Heyman, Reigns, Lesnar.
I don't think so. I think so. I think he's done, especially with COVID. He seems like a particular guy. I can't see him being interested in doing anything like that. I mean, I could be wrong. That could be a big surprise. Maybe that's the thing that happens at the Rumble. None of us know. When we hear that music, we go, oh, man, I didn't know about this.
Yeah.
I hope they don't do that, though. I hope they don't, because we've seen that with Roman so many times. But,
it's time to let those guys go. It's time
let's let that go.
Lesnar,
and now you got to let me go. I got my kid standing right over here, so I got to be let go.
All right. Well, cheers, John. It's always a pleasure, man. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and catch up with Break the Apocalypse. I've got 2 weeks worth of shows. Got 2 weeks worth of shows to listen to. So
hopefully people will check out Break the Apocalypse.
Have another Guinness.
Yeah, and I hope you guys stay safe. And tell that pretty boy I said he was scared to come on with me. I know he was afraid to come on.
Yeah.
He'll be told. But I'll drop you a message soon, John, and we'll sort of WrestleMania show out.
You guys be safe across the pond. All right.
You too, John. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.